Hello, folks. Hello. Welcome back to the show. We've got another good episode for you. I didn't expect this. Actually, just kind of fell into my laps. And I was like, you know what? I want to get Johny on the show, Johny from the Iron Show. And I reached out and he was like, totally, let's do it, And you might know him from, like I just said, the Iron Show or Space Weather. You might know him maybe because you're a part of his network, the Fringe Radio Network, And, it's quite an honor. Thanks for coming on the show, Johny Iron. How you doing? I'm gonna give you a little round of applause because I never use this thing.
Oh, it's so nice to be here with you. Oh, it's so nice to be here.
Oh, gosh.
I've always wanted to be on your show. Oh, I finally made it.
That is the only way to intro. People call you in the streets Johny Iron. How you doing, Johny?
They do.
Yeah.
I've got iron in my pants.
Oh, man, I believe it was Gonzo. Gonzo gave you that name, huh?
Gonzo gave me that name, yeah. Way back in history.
Yeah, indeed.
11, 12 years ago.
Yes, indeed, man. Well, I've heard your story, man, a couple times, and every time I hear it, either on I Was a Canary Cry. I'm not sure if were you on Basil's show, the Joy Spiracy Theory?
Yeah.
Yeah, I think, because I heard it multiple times, and I know you went on Canary a few times, and I mean, it's just always a joy, and you always, just tell your history about, sex, drugs, and rock and roll back in the day, you know what I mean? And just how all of that was, and pretty intense stuff, man. So I was like, dude, we got to have him back here. Let's see what happens. Let's see if this recorder can support the magnitude,
Let's see if we don't break something.
Exactly.
Oh, yeah.
All right, Johny. Hey, so thanks for coming on, man. Like I said, why don't you tell the folks if nobody knows who you are, like they need to get on it first of all. But if some of our listeners, because we get a lot of cross listeners from the network, of course, and so if they don't know who you are, why don't you tell them a little bit about yourself? Who is this Johny Iron?
Who is this Johny Iron? Let's go back to probably 2007.
Okay, it's a good year.
Huh?
It's a good year.
It's a good year.
Yeah.
It was a wild year.
Mm-hmm.
I was up. I think I was on speed. It was about 3:00 in the morning.
Whoa.
I used to watch this show called The Three Angels Network, and it was a satellite TV Christian show. It was I think it was the Seventh-day Adventist channel. Anyway, yeah. Anyway, they had this thing called The Panel. I think it was called The Panel. And it had this like desk with like 6 guys sitting at it talking, That's all it was. It was like totally low budget, you know, 3:00 in the morning stuff. And one of them goes, have you heard of this new thing called podcasts? They were all shaking their heads like, nah. One of them goes, yeah, isn't that thing where you like if you have an iPod and then you like plug it into your computer and there's like these sort of like radio show type things. It literally was brand new back then. I mean, it really was. People just didn't. It was like Apple only, iTunes, and there wasn't that many people. iTunes was just like begging for podcasters because like there wasn't hardly any.
Wow.
Those were the days. It was really easy.
Mm-hmm.
You have to jump through. Well, actually, it's pretty easy again now. But for a while, you had to jump through a lot of hoops and stuff to get into the iTunes catalog. But yeah, and they said anyway. The guy looks at the screen and he goes, "Please, if anybody knows how to do this technology, please, we need Christian podcasts." I thought, wow, hey, that's easy. I can do that.
Right.
I'd been a recording artist for years and an internet geek. I built some of the first websites in the early 90s.
Wait, but you said you can do that, but you said you were also on speed.
Yeah, oh yeah. Oh yeah. Yeah. Oh yeah.
Oh, but you still had a heart for the Lord, huh?
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. Yeah, that's the thing. Like John Ford, we just did a session on the Iron Show with John Ford, Free Indeed. He's a gay boy.
Mm-hmm.
And he is, he used to say that he kind of leads people out of the lifestyle, but really he just leads people to Jesus because he's not really, he'll let the Lord work out their lifestyle issues.
Mm-hmm.
He, leads them to Jesus. And so he's not a gay, he's not like practicing gay.
Mm-hmm.
He knows it's kind of the wrong way to go and stuff. But, usually, I've talked to him and, he was doing a lot of different drugs when he was a Christian and he just would pray over his drugs and stuff like that. And
Really?
I was just like, yeah, I was that way too.
Dang.
I've always been a really bad Christian. And so I thought, well, what kind of show can I do?
Right.
And I thought, well, it's going to have to be a bad Christian show for bad Christians because I'm a bad Christian and I can't fake a bunch of stuff like I'm virtuous and righteous and upstanding and everything. So I'm going to have to do a bad Christian show for bad Christians.
Right.
And so I was hanging out at the time on the message boards with my original co-host, Rick White, the surfer, and San Diego surfer. And so we formed a West Coast style show called The Iron Show. Ironshow.com was registered early in 2009, and our first show went live August 29th, 2009. And we've always been live. We were live on the first show was live, and we're still live. We always do it live.
Wow.
Very early, we do a studio.
You were ahead of the curve, because now that, like, if you're not, podcasts exploded so much. Now, if you're not doing something live, it's kind of like, okay, he's not even live, bro. Do you even podcast, bro? Like, that's how it is now,
Is it?
Yeah, no. I mean, especially, if you're doing like YouTube Live or Twitch or anything, like if you're not doing anything like that, you're just kind of like looked down upon as a podcaster,
If you're doing recorded sessions.
Yeah. People want to see the live. I get a lot of messages like, hey man, when are you going to do those live, YouTube or Twitch, or, when are you going to start streaming if you're, and recording? And I'm like, no, I just don't have that kind of time and setup, and Omar's not always with me. So it's kind of hard to fly solo for me personally, at least,
It takes a lot more gear and a lot more signal path.
Absolutely.
Live session.
Absolutely.
Yeah, you got to have more gear because it's a wild monster. You got to tame it on the fly. A lot of us, like me, we're our own sound engineers at the same time.
Right.
So you got to have a lot of gear and a lot of monitors, so you can keep an eye on everything, but listen to your guests. People say, why do you have so many monitors? It's so I don't have to do anything. I just bounce up and look, and then look back down at the floor, which is where I be when I'm listening to my guests. I want to be looking at the floor, not anything else. Yeah. So anyway, fast forward a little bit, a couple of years, around end of 2010, Bruce Collins, the clown, Prince of Doom, he told me. Bruce Collins had been really a staple of podcasting since 2005. And I was a big fan of his, and I got a hold of him finally, and he was a big fan of mine, which was really weird. And so anyway, he got a hold of me late 2010, say, hey, we're starting me and producer Rick, which is his producer. He had a producer. We're going to start up a thing called the Fringe Radio Network, and you and L.A. Marzulli are the first ones we thought of. So I'm like, okay, cool.
Wow.
Like, can you do a live session? I go, we always do live.
Yeah.
He's like, oh, that's perfect. So yeah, and so the Fringe Radio Network was born the very end of 2010, and I was doing live shows on that until up to 2016, when Bruce Collins had left and producer Rick was on his own, and producer Rick was having me produce for L.A. Marzulli and Pastor Casper and do live engineering. And finally, he said, "Man, I'm getting sick of this, dude." He goes, "Man, I want out." I go, "Dude, you want to sell it to me?" He's like, "Yeah." "You want to buy the network?" I said, "Yeah." So we scraped me and my partner Brandon Schwinn. We scraped up all our pennies and ate ramen noodles for like 2-3 months, and bought it from producer Rick in 2016. And so there it is, the history,
Very
my
good.
history. There's the Fringe Radio Network, the Iron Show, all
Nice.
that, baby.
That's awesome. That's awesome. Going back a little bit, just because I want to get into actually one of the questions I wanted to ask you. You kind of mentioned earlier, well, you talked about it, and I want to talk it out. And I'm not of course, you've listened to our show. By the way, thank you for that. You just did a space weather thing, and you talked about listening to our show from the beginning. So thanks for that. I appreciate that.
Oh yeah, baby.
What I was gonna say is something I heard you say before, and I don't want to, people to hear you explain yourself. And I guess I'll play the devil's advocate, the more traditional evangelical Christian, having issues with you being a Christian, and you say you're a bad one, or you were, and you were on speed, but yet you had this idea to do this thing. You hear a lot in the church today, especially like, well, as soon as you receive Christ, you receive the Holy Spirit and all that stuff. And, you start this process of regeneration, your body, you're different, but to some people, like, it's so transformative where they just immediately cannot touch a drug or look at whatever it is that they were doing, or they come up from that water after that baptism and they're literally a new person and they change, but for others it's not so much the case. And it's kind of, actually, I feel like it's been a burden in a lot of Christians, because a lot of them feel like they don't live up to the expectations, and it makes them doubt if they even are Christian, And so, like, what are your thoughts, like, on being a Christian but struggling so much with for like your instance, like speed and drugs or different things like that?
Wow, I think you just pretty much already kind of explained my position.
Oh.
Yeah, that's exactly what I would say.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, you got people that just they're transformed instantly and they go with it, and other people it takes them years.
Mhm.
From my transformation was back in 1985. Were you even born then in April of 85?
I was born in October of 1985.
So before you were born, my that was my conversion experience.
Okay.
Yeah, on an April morning in 1985, dude, in a hardcore snake bite Pentecostal church, guys, I was on the altar and they all had their hands on me and they're speaking in tongues, and dudes rolling around on the floor, foaming at the
Classic.
mouth, twitching, slain in the spirit, and
Mhm.
just wow, it just was my whole life, my whole worldview was just instantly transformed. I saw the world for what it was. I understood what sin was. I understood how sinful I was, and I understood why I needed Jesus, because I understood how I was helpless
Mm.
without him. I had no spiritually, I had nothing.
Mhm.
Really, I was dead. I knew that before that I was dead, and now that I'm alive, and now I can see. My eyes were opened. But as far as behavior, my behavior changed instantly. But as far as like being like always being wonderful, warm-hearted, straight-laced Christian, no, that took years. I'm still struggling with it.
Mhm. Mhm.
I've been a good boy for quite a while now.
Mm.
I think it's been like a year now, actually, which is pretty good for me. I haven't dropped the ball for like a year.
That's good.
Yeah, Wednesday, when was the last time I dropped the ball, but really bad? Yeah, about April 2020. Yeah. So yeah, a year. It's been a year.
Mid-pandemic, huh?
No, I'm just, as you get older and you keep listening to the Bible, I listen to the Bible myself, dailyaudiobible.com,
Mhm.
and keep walking with Jesus, and your faith increases. your instances of like sinning and dropping the ball get farther and farther apart. And that's how it's been for me. It's been years. It's taken years. So April 85, what's that? Is that 36 years
Mm-hmm.
it's
Yeah.
taken to get where I'm at now, which is halfway decent.
Yeah. Yeah.
Half decent.
Now, you know,
You could say I'm not a Christian. If you're comfortable saying that I'm not a Christian and you want to judge me, then I would say go ahead. I mean, it's it's your call. You can call it however you want.
mm,
Call him like see him, baby.
yeah. Now, like, when I ask you, just because over the years I know that you've, especially the network you're in, and I'm sure you've stumbled upon all kinds of different research that's different theological perspectives. I know you've had debates about a lot of different things over the years. Me personally, we were in a pretty serious cult. I don't know if you've heard that episode where we talk about that, and
Which one?
me and Omar were talking about. I think it was like episode 10, and we were talking about how we used to work like in the exorcism stuff and the deliverance ministry,
Oh yeah,
and
I
then
remember all that. I thought it was a different one though. I thght you were like, you were like a hardcore Pentecostal, right? Like,
it was, well, the church was like a mixture of different things, and in our opinion, once you start like listening and really studying a lot of the biblical theology, especially from the Near Eastern perspective, as a looking into that kind of stuff, you start realizing maybe that a lot of churches do things that don't seem to be theological. And I don't know, like, did you ever think of people falling down and shaking and foaming at the mouth? Do you ever think that possibly isn't God, or is that just people's emotions? Is that a spiritual experience, or have you ever thought of something like that? Like, do you think that's, or in your opinion, is that just their experience of God? Like, I don't know. I just want to know what your thoughts are on that.
yeah, that's my roots, That's where I came from. And I've never dropped that. I mean, it's like whatever that is, slain in the spirit, whatever that is, it's I mean, you can see it in the Bible, different. I mean, I say foaming at the mouth, I'm exaggerating. I've never
Yeah.
actually seen anybody foaming at the mouth, but
Yeah.
kind of slain in the spirit, laying down, just kind of just totally out of it,
Hmm. Hmm.
It's the Holy Spirit is just slaying them and they're like floating in that living water and stuff, which happened to me one time. I was a big doubter in it in the very beginning. Dude, happened to me at a camp meeting, at a Pentecostal camp meeting. I was in the back of this gigantic auditorium. It was a log cabin auditorium, and with like bleacher style seats going down. They rise up in like an opera house
Hmm.
so the stage is below you, and I was in the back, and this old man, he's like 99 years old. I never seen anybody so old. He's standing up. He's doing this old fashioned camp meeting, Pentecostal sermon, and he starts speaking in tongues. He goes, Holy Spirit, please come upon us. Please come upon us. Oh, please, Holy Spirit. Oh, please give me your blessing. Please let me send you out across the room, across this room. And he says something in tongues, and he just he goes like with his fingers,
Hmm.
and he sends this wave out, right? And
Hmm.
everybody's like falling down in front of me. They're it's like dominoes. It's coming up, and I'm like flexing my legs. I mean, like a kung fu stance. I'm like, they're gonna get me. They're gonna get me. And then wham! You knocked me right on my butt,
Hmm.
and I'm up at the ceiling, and it was like I was on a hot tub, and this clear, like water that was alive, that was flowing through every part of me, and I was just like, I've never been that high in my life. It was like, wow, this is this is like real. I
Hmm.
was like, wow, I couldn't stand up no matter what. It knocked me down. And so just from experience, I mean, I believe in that. It does. That only happened to me that one time. The only time that I've ever gotten close is there was a door greeter at this little church. Actually, it was a mega church where I got baptized, and he's just this old hippie guy,
Mm-hmm.
kind of like a homeless guy. And when you got near him, you could feel that. You
Mm-hmm.
could feel that same clear living water spirit just emanating out of him, and you just wanted to get up and stand next to him so
Mm-hmm.
you could just like bathe in that. It's like you could really feel the spirit coming off of him.
Mm.
Other than that, that's the only. I haven't had a lot of supernatural encounters, some, but not a lot. And
Yeah.
as the Holy Spirit goes, I believe it because it happened to me.
Right, right. I think the nearest thing I ever had happen to me is the initial Christian church that we went to. Um, they believed that sometimes you had to deliver yourself of demons before Christ comes into your heart, and so Christ coming into you, sometimes by consequence, kind of you have like a kind of a violent demonic uh reaction because you're getting touched by God and you're not yet of God. So now there's a demon that needs to leave, and sometimes people, have these very supernatural, uh, movie like possession type things. And then me personally, when they did that prayer for me, quote unquote, I don't say like quote unquote like I don't believe it, but like just their type of prayer was like a deliverance prayer towards me. They asked like the Holy Spirit to enter into me, and if there was something evil to dissipate it, to burn it away, and with the fire of the Holy Spirit, And I remember very clearly from the ground up feeling like from the feet, starting from my feet or from my head. I don't really remember, but I just remember that it kind of like rose through my whole body, this extreme heat. Like I felt super hot. You know what I mean? And I started like sweating, and I didn't have like a very violent reaction, but I just I had this really really hot body. Like my body was so hot, and when they told whatever spirits or whatever to leave in the name of Jesus, I after the prayer, like I walked back to my seat, and I felt about 100 pounds lighter. Like I felt like something was completely lifted from my body. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And so I was just like light as a feather, and I was like, "What the heck just happened?" You know what I mean? And that
That's a conversion experience. So you accepted Jesus at that time, then, after
uh,
the
pretty
demons.
pretty close after that. It was a Wednesday. That would happen on a Friday, and then on a Wednesday, I think the next week or the week after, I went back and there was like an altar call, to
Oh, yeah.
receive Christ, and then I had another experience, but it was different. It was like I was filled with just happiness and peace, and I was overwhelmed with emotions. I couldn't stop sobbing and crying, and I stood up and I had that same kind of floating experience where I felt like I was floating, and I was like, man, I feel amazing, and I was just like, wow, and I remember that's the day I was 15 years old on Wednesday. I remember I accepted the Lord, and it was just like a different time after that. You know what I mean?
So you've experienced that. You know what that feels like, the Holy Spirit, when it's really strong.
Yes, indeed. But it's just to me. Since I never, especially the church we went to, the Holy Spirit was never uh manifesting itself like that, like where it was like strike you to the ground. Anytime anyone was stricken to the ground, it was usually uh because they were being delivered from a demon, and then later when we got into the actual ministry, you speak to these people, and some of those were, in retrospect, I think some of them were just in people's minds, I think a little bit psychosomatic maybe, but some of them, a lot of them, were definitely demons for sure, because they were like, there was these little girls with like the strength of like 4 or 5 men just lifting you up with one hand, and she was like 14 years old, this little skinny girl, and then
Whoa.
and just lifting up Omar from his shirt, like from under his arms, lifting him completely up, and he was like 200 and something pounds, just like nothing. You know what I mean?
Whoa.
And I was like, that's a demon. You know what I mean?
Oh, you thought she had a demon, or
No, she
it
did,
was just.
because she was very upset, because we do different kinds of prayers where there's days where we just focus on exorcisms. You know what I mean? and because we have that church has a day dedicated to people that have by accident or on purpose practiced seances or conjuring or witchcraft or whatever, and of course in the Latino community, doing witchcraft on people is synonymous almost to like the Catholic Church, because they use saints and they use the angel of death, and they use a lot of things like that. They blend Catholicism with ancient practices with magic, and then they do what they call binding spells and all kinds of different things on people, supposedly to give them bad luck or to make them, not be a fertile woman, or for different reasons. One person does some kind of binding spell on another, and so the services were dedicated to that, because the church that we went to started in Brazil, and the most prominent religion in Brazil is conjuring. It's like spirit guides and things like that. One of the most prominent religions, and so that church kind of brought that stuff over here, and so we were witnessing that pretty much on a weekly basis. Every Friday at night, we did those kinds of prayers, and we just experienced the most wild demonic experiences in trying to deliver people in the name of Jesus.
So it sounds like the church was kind of mixed up theologically, but they actually had a kind of a good mission.
I mean, I think so. But then also we found out a lot of the leaders were pretty much just taking money from the people,
A lot of times, though, you'll have these wacky churches. Their theology is wacky, but they're still preaching Jesus. They're still delivering people in the name of Jesus, even though their theology is messed up. I see that a lot. I kind of take the good and chew the meat and spit out the bones type of thing.
Yeah, that's kind of my conclusion, because I'm kind of like, some of that stuff was completely untheological, but at the other in many ways, in the end, that's where I gave my heart over to Jesus. I mean, and it's just kind of amazing to see God work in the midst of all of that man-made theology,
Yeah, the Holy Spirit will still come in and do what he does, do what, the Holy Spirit does. It just, you see it happening time and time again to these churches with bad theology, especially, Bethel Church, which is a huge one there in Redding, California. Me and Peter Goodgame really love Bethel Church. And yeah, it's weird. Yeah, they got weird theology. Yeah, okay. But the Holy Spirit really moves there, regardless. And me and Peter Goodgame, my all-time hero, from the very beginning, 2007, I was listening to Peter Goodgame, everything that he had ever done, and following him. He was at one time was the world's foremost authority on the Antichrist. And he was a big hero of mine. And me and Peter Goodgame always had this, vision of making a pilgrimage together to Bethel, and we finally did. Oh man, it must have been about 7 years ago. He flew out from Hawaii, and I drove down with my wife, and yeah, we hung out at Bethel Church for 3 days, and it was awesome. And wow, I mean, I didn't get to see any angel feathers or fire tunnels,
gold dust.
Oh yeah, or gold dust, or what I really wanted to see, some grave sucking. I didn't get to see any grave sucking. I was bummed out. I was like in the parking lot going, dude, where's the grave sucking? And they're like, nah, because that YouTube. I think that YouTube is the only place for that. I'm like, oh, really? He goes, yeah, I don't actually know anybody who does that. Yeah. It was just like, I was bummed out because, I went to like 4 services there in 3 days, and it was just like a regular, normal, plain vanilla church. Like, wow.
You're like, boo.
Where's all the angel feathers? And they had really good, solid theology in their sermons. I didn't hear anything bad. Bill Johnson was on vacation somewhere. So, yeah, so that might have been why I didn't hear any weird theology. But the people there were like the best I've ever. They flew in from all over the world. So I was hanging out with this guy from Australia, and that was his big thing to make a pilgrimage to Bethel, and I was hanging out with people from New York and New Zealand and South Africa, and everybody was so great. The people there were just the greatest Christians. Like, it's like I was enchanting to go there. But yeah, anyway.
Oh,
But
yeah.
yeah, I mean, there's bad theology. And Leonard, my co-host on the Iron Show, Leonard Olivares, Fringe Radio Network's own Mexican gangster. He was sort of at a church like yours. It was more like hardcore Mexican Pentecostal. So it was like he saw a frog come out of somebody's mouth when they were being delivered.
Wow. Well,
Yeah.
I saw that happening when me and my mom went to a witch.
Oh.
We went to a witch, looking for deliverance because other witches had told us that very, very powerful black magic was done against our family, right? So my mom was like, "Well, I got to find the most affordable and most powerful witch I can give money to deliver us from such thing, And we went to Mexico, just Baja California, not really Mexico. We went to a city called Calexico, and there was a lady deep in the hills there, deep in the city where it's just pretty much abandoned. There's like hardly anybody lived there. And when we got there, she had pretty much like a line out the door, kind of like a John of God situation. Everybody was dressed in white or different things like that, and she was performing her things, and it was scary because I was a kid, man. I was very young, and I can hear people from the outside screaming in pain from whatever she was doing inside. It sounded like a torture chamber, and it was super scary. But like once it was our turn, that lady pulled out what looked like a frog out of her stomach, like her belly button. And if it was a trick, it was the best trick I've ever seen in my life, but it hurt my mother a lot. You know what I mean? And it just pulled it out. It was
pulled it out of your mom.
Yeah. And she obviously did these weird incantation type prayers or whatever. And I couldn't understand her. And she also pulled, which you could see her pulling it out, a rusty nail,
Whoa.
And she also pulled out what she said was dead man's bones and like little fragments of dead man's bones. And she said all of that was used to make a hex on her. You know what I mean?
Oh, wow.
And I saw that and I was like, dude, how? Like, again, it hurt her a lot. And if it wasn't real, like if it was like a sleight of hand thing or whatever, it was the best I've ever seen because you could see my mom's skin and she never bled or anything. It was crazy. You can see but you can see it pulling out of her skin. It was nuts, And then she was like, all right, well, it's your turn. And I'm like, what? My turn? I'm just a kid. You know what I mean? Like, what are you doing? And she started doing her prayer thing on me. And I pretty much went down to my skibbies, just had like my boxer briefs, and she started doing her thing. And she's waving kind of like this cross like pendulum thing over me and doing this prayer thing. And I was looking at my body and she goes, look, I want you to look. And she's doing that prayer and that thing is like moving quickly. And as soon as it touches my chest, my whole body expels from itself like so much salt, like big giant granules of salt,
Whoa.
And just instantly appeared. Boom, just like appeared. And I was like, what in the world is this, And she's like,
your chest was covered with like big salt crystals.
What was that?
It's like your chest was covered with like big salt crystals all over it.
My whole body from head to toe. It was like someone when I stood up, it was like somebody did a chalk outline of just salt that just came out of my body. You know what I mean?
Wow.
And she never like poured her hands around me or nothing. She just put that pendulum thing on my chest. You know what I mean? And it just started coming out and I was shaking my hair and I can feel it just nonstop granules coming out of my head, like my hair somehow, you know what I mean? And I'm just like, what in the world is happening? And she's like, okay, I need you to turn around. And I didn't see this part, but she started rubbing my neck, and I got scared because that's what she did to my mom. And when she did that to my mom, she had pulled out of the back of her neck like those dead man bones, you know.
Oh,
And so she started pulling it, and I could feel the pain, like it hurt so bad, and I can feel it, and I can feel something moving, and then suddenly I feel her pull like multiple things out of my neck. I can feel the pulling of my skin, you know. And when I turn around, sure enough, like in her hand, she had more dead man's bones, and they looked like they were wet, you know, like they were, you know, but
whoa.
but again, like no bleeding, no nothing, and I'm just like, what is going on? Like this just defies anything, like the salt thing alone, you know. But I give that more credit because I saw it with my own eyes. You know what I mean?
Yeah, huh?
I didn't see the bones, but I felt it, and but I did see it when she did it to my mother, and so like that was probably the most wicked, the most weird, like spiritual thing I ever encountered, you know, like personally.
But it's personal experience.
Yeah, yeah.
But it's like Leonard Oliveris, my co-host, says, things like that. Nobody can take that away from you. They can say,
Hmm.
"Oh, that didn't happen," but they can't take it away from you. You
Right.
were there.
I was there, you know, and I just, I don't know, man. To this day, if anything, when, you know, as time went by, because there's a time like in my 20s where I kind of wanted to dispel everything, where I was like, no, God isn't real. Um, I wanted to really lean towards atheism, and I was like disappointed with God, I guess. You know, I was just like, whatever. He wasn't answering certain prayers, quote unquote, according to me. It was just like, this isn't real. And so, you know, part of what kept me believing in the supernatural and the spiritual was actually those evil experiences that I encountered. You know what I mean? And I was like, well, but those things were like inexplicable. Like I don't know what to say other than that's impossible. And it kind of kept me from completely saying the spiritual doesn't exist, because I had such a supernatural experience myself that I said I can't do away with that. But even then, I was just kind of like, oh, I almost bought into the whole Peter Joseph zeitgeist religion. Jesus isn't real. He's just a regurgitation of other gods, and I was pretty much like about to throw Christianity into the trash, you know, until YouTube, you know, started doing that whole suggestion algorithm thing back in the day. It started a while ago, and it suggested Chris White's debunking uh,
Of the
zeitgeist.
zeitgeist.
Yeah,
He did a
and
really good job at that.
yes, indeed. And so when I watched that whole thing, like it was like almost 4 hours long. It was even longer than the actual documentary. You know, he just put so much information into it. And that one and the alien one that he did, also debunking like the ancient aliens and all that. Um, Literally when I finished it, I broke into tears because I was kind of like, oh my gosh, like it led me back to Christ. You know, where I was like, I can't believe I was going to throw all this away, and it made me realize how little I knew about my Bible, because I was being convinced by Peter Joseph, you know, which none of his points had any credence, you know, or they had no depth whatsoever, and I just believed it, you know, plain and simple, just because someone said it on documentary, you know.
Yeah, it makes it sound believable, yet it's like Chris White totally exposed it. Chris White, have you ever talked to him?
You know what? I've reached out. I've never had the pleasure, you know.
I hung out with him in person
Oh,
for a
nice.
few days back in, where was that? Indiana, at a conference. I got to hang out with him in person for a few days back in, it must have been 2011,
Hmm.
so 10 years ago. What a great guy. What a real, genuine Christian guy.
Mm.
I mean, come on. Big guy, too. He's tall.
Oh, really?
And tall. Oh, yeah. He's like 10 feet tall.
He's a Nephilim.
Him and Russ Dizdar. I got to hang out with Russ Dizdar for a few days.
Uh-huh.
Dizdar is a monster. It's like, have you ever seen Bigfoot? No, but I had a Russ Dizdar sighting. I came around the corner and he grabbed me and picked me up. Like my feet were like 2 feet off the ground, dangling.
Hmm.
Hugs me, and he drops me down, and I see him about, I don't know, about 8 hours later. I come around another corner and he grabs me,
Hmm.
picks me up off the ground, hugging me. And then I see him about, I don't know, the next morning and come around the corner, and he grabs me, and he hugs me, picks me up, and he sets me down. I go, wow, that's like 3 times. I go, so you must know who I am. He goes, no, who are you? I said, I'm Johnny from the Iron Show. You know, what's that? He goes, oh yeah, I know who you are.
That's funny.
I said, so what's up? Why did you hug me all these times? He goes, you look like you needed a hug. I sort of do look like I need a hug. Great guy. Almost got baptized by the guy, by Restizdar in the swimming pool. But, he had a good line, and he goes, get in here, Johnny, get in here. I'm like, I already got baptized. He goes, let's do it again. So many people that, had been led to the Lord that day. I was like, nah, I'm not going to, let them get baptized.
Right.
But I've always regretted that. Right. I got baptized by Restizdar. Say I almost
did. Almost did. He wanted me to, and he hugged me.
Yeah. He's a Restizdar. He's really something. He's got these laser beam eyes, and he looks around the crowd when he's talking about like he talks about people that have been multiples, that have been multiplied, and they send spies in to these lectures that he has, and they they send the Black Army, the Black Awakening, the Black Army sends these spies in, and he goes around with his laser beam eyes, and he looks at you, and he looks into your soul to see if you're one of the programmed multiples.
Yeah. I know what that means, because I heard that the Canary Cry episode, but what exactly does he mean by, like, he feels like there's people that, what are these? I don't actually remember too much. Like, these people that are programmed, are they human? Are they clones? What is that? Like, what's going on there?
They're humans. They've been, it's like a Montauk Project type thing. They've been programmed with multiple personalities, and they have a trigger. It's like somebody
like a Manchurian Candidate.
Yeah, somebody will maybe call them, their handler or their leader will call them on the telephone, at 2 a.m, and say lollipop, and then bam, they switch into this monster super soldier, highly trained in all whatever art they've trained them in, like some in weapons, some in fighting, assassination, whatever. They get triggered, and their other personality, their alter.
And then these are like real government projects, right? It's like, because a lot of people will say, like, this is just hearsay. This is just Winter Soldier, Captain America kind of stuff,
Well, we know as part of Project Paperclip that they brought Nazi doctors over, out in the 50s and 60s. They brought him over. They brought him over right after the war. They brought von Braun and his boys over to work on the rockets and missiles and the space program. And they also, people don't really realize, or know very, it's not common knowledge, that they also brought in mind control, Nazi mind control guys. They started Project Montauk was part of it, but there's other projects. I can't remember the names of them, but they worked at a split personality, breaking people into multiple personalities.
Wasn't one of those like the Monarch thing?
The Montauk Project, was part of that, and I can't think of the other name for it, but they successfully split people into multiple personalities, and they would use trauma. They would traumatize them. They usually did it once as youths, and they would split them through trauma. And I mean, they already knew that people that exposed to extreme trauma, they will develop an alternate personality in order to deal with the trauma.
Right. It's like a survival mechanism, right?
That's natural in the human condition.
Yeah.
And so they exploited that and created people with multiple personalities, and multiple personalities that are hidden And so they wait for a trigger to wake them up,
Yeah.
and then go over and do whatever they need to do. According to Rest Isdar, there is a massive army of altars that are all over the world, especially in America, and they're in positions of power. They're paramedics, they're police officers, they're this, they're that, and he believes there'll be an awakening when they're awakened, when they're triggered, and they'll just go mad and just take over the country.
Yeah,
Yeah,
that's the part I remember, but I was just trying to remember like exactly what these you know, altered people are. You know what I mean? Or
they're super soldiers. They're
Mm.
black soldiers.
Yeah. Did you see?
Black.
Did you happen to see Split?
No, yeah.
Yeah, there's a follow up
What
movie.
what's the name of that guy? That actor?
Oh gosh, that's a good question.
He's really good. He
I,
was in X-Men. He played
yeah, he's pretty Xavier.
yeah, he played young Xavier in X-Men.
Yeah, I forgot his name. He's like a Scottish dude or something.
There was a Split, and then there was a sequel to Split.
Yeah, that sequel.
Yeah.
That sequel was the one that kind of like freaked me out a little bit the most, because we've talked on our show about, obviously if you listen to our kind of shows, we realize that Hollywood and a lot of people very openly but secretly talk about this stuff pretty much in all their movies, and there's like a lot of evidence for it, and of course when people say that, sometimes it's just like, no, there's no proof of that, but like there's like we just talked about, there's these real programs, and Hollywood makes movies about it, and sometimes, I don't know, I'm not saying, I don't know who the writers are or the producers, but it just seems sometimes it's pretty intentional, and other times maybe that's just someone thought it was a great story and they made a movie about something that they don't even know is actually very occult or evil in nature, you know what I mean? But that movie, what surprised me is the follow-up movie, and I can't even think of the name of the follow-up movie. um uh if you did you happen to see that follow-up one?
Yeah, the second one, the sequel to
Yeah.
it. Yeah, that was freaky.
Oh, it's called Glass.
Glass.
Yeah. And there's some moments where the lady that's in charge of like the secret organization, she has like they all have like that little tattoo on their hand to symbolize that they're part of an organization, a secret organization, And I thought it was really interesting. There's a part that she mentions where she tells Bruce Willis she was obsessed with convincing him that he was nothing, that he's a nobody, that he wasn't actually, you know, like a hero, or that he actually had no strength within. And her words were very specific, you know what I mean? And apparently, like, there's this whole organization, this secret organization, trying to convince all the people that have greatness within to not realize their potential, not realize what they are, And I felt like that was like analogous to like the plan of God for us, And then there's all these people in the background working so that people don't understand that you're part of this greater plan. You know what I mean? Like, I just felt that moment. It kind of freaked me out because I felt like, to me at least, it almost felt like, dude, there really is, these people like in the Black Awakening. There really is all these, in a very physical and also spiritual way, people working to constantly try and make sure that people don't realize who we are and in the story of the Bible, like in the story, in this great narrative that we're a part of. You know what I'm saying? I don't know if you catch what I'm saying there, Johnny.
I have never thought of that, but I believe it. That sounds like a really like a real conspiracy. I
Mm-hmm.
mean, I'm sure that's going on. There's so many psyops going on.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, this generation now with YouTube and everything, and and social media being so prolific, and you see all these psyops that come out, like flat Earth and
Mm-hmm.
like all this other stuff. And I'm sure that makes sense to me. I'm sure that's going on.
Yeah, because
They
I
do not want you to realize your potential. That is a really believable conspiracy.
yeah, because
I'm not a conspiracy freak, but yeah.
yeah, because The reason I bring that up is just because, like, I've been on this kind of, like, you could say, what's the right word? Like my little soapbox, I guess. I post often about different subjects, but they're all related to one thing in my head, which is what it means to be in the image of God. You know what I mean? And when I read like the books that Heiser has made, and have you heard of that podcast, the Bible Project?
The Bible Project. No, there's one I haven't heard.
They're pretty big. Heiser's been on their show and they nerded out and everything. It was really funny to hear them nerd out, you know? Um, and basically they go through the Bible and they just nerd out on a specific subject, you know? And they did a series on the image of God, you know, and what that means according to the Hebrews. And it was so fascinating because if we understood like what it meant to be in the image of God, it goes beyond, like, because if you ask today, like a modern day, like I go to a Calvary chapel, for example, and I do it often just to kind of hear people's thoughts about certain things. And I ask them, like, what does it mean to you? I used to teach the youth as well. And I used to ask them, like, what does it mean to you guys to be in the image of God? And you kind of get that classic response, like, oh, you know, to be long suffering, to be loving, compassionate. You know what I mean? You get those kind of like fruits of the Holy Spirit kind of responses. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And but when you look at the Old Testament and in the New Testament as well, the image of God is like it's like a status. It's not just like to be a son of God, you know, to be son of the Most High, and to be made in His image. It's taking away, yeah, they've taken away the fact that you are like God in many ways, but you're not. You know what I mean? You have this responsibility and this authority that was given to you when you read Genesis, for example. Like you're a musician, for example, and I'm sure you've probably made a song, an original. Have you made like an original song, Johnny?
Oh, yeah, that's all I've ever
There
done.
you go. So, in essence, according to the Hebrew understanding of the image of God, you brought something into existence that didn't exist before. You know what I mean?
Yep.
And so that is part of what it means to be in the image of God. You have this ability to create. We have the literal ability to make more copies of us, to make babies. You know what I mean? You know, and we have this ability to create art and to just like we're so resourceful and all of that. You know, although there's a corruption element to it, obviously we know why that is, but it's part of that. You know, even our ability to choose to do wrong or what is, you know, like just this is free will. Like nobody else has that but God Himself, and we have this ability to do that, you know. And so like when it goes so deep, and they just have like this whole series on the Bible Project and what that means, and it's just overwhelming with the responsibility that you should have, and it also makes you realize that most of us don't think ourselves with that sort of potential or ability because we don't see ourselves in comparison to Christ or to God. You know, we kind of see ourselves as we are, like as the sinners that we are, the fallen people that we are, you know. And so obviously we understand that God regenerates us and all that, but like really diving into what it means in the image of God has made me, for example, be a better father, you know, be a better brother, a better neighbor, just a friend, because there's all these responsibilities to every category of my existence. You know what I'm saying? And so it's just a lot more important to me. And so when I've taught on that for so long, just because I want people to realize that. And when I saw that movie, it was like, to me, it just struck me that way, where it was like, dude, like if people understood like how valuable you are, my goodness, like what it means to be made in the image of Son of the Most High, you're just kind of like, man, we wouldn't be treating each other we wouldn't be having these issues where I look at you, Johnny, and I mean, you look, well, at least in this little picture that I'm looking at on Skype, you look white. You know what I mean? I wouldn't be talking about white privilege or Mexicans or blacks or any sort of race issue, because you're not looking at the race, you're looking at the status of being the Son of the Most High. You know what I'm saying? We just wouldn't even have the problems that we're having, you know?
Yeah, and there's no racism at all, and there's no there's no even mention of race in the Bible. I don't know if you want to go down the race road. There is no mention of race in the Bible. It's
Mhm.
like if I mean, I dare somebody to find any reference to anybody's skin color in the Bible. I mean, you have a Ethiopian eunuch. We don't know what color he is. He could have been a white boy from Ethiopia. We
Mhm.
don't.
We have when people might be getting triggered, as they like to say, because they want to say that you're wrong in this moment, but we have God talking about they're from certain areas, but they're not talking about race necessarily, you know?
No, I show me one reference to like race. Show me a
Mhm.
black guy. Show me an Indian. Show me a white boy. Show me something in the Bible that says anything about anybody's skin color.
Mhm. Mhm.
It-
No.
Except David. I mean, King David. His appearance was ruddy, since he was kind of
Fair
ruddy.
skinned.
Ruddy is kind of reddish,
Mhm.
kind
Now,
of reddish, and Joseph also. I believe it says something about that he was ruddy. Also, there's a statue of Joseph that they found in Gomer, which was where the Hebrews lived in Egypt, and they unearthed it. And he's got the coat of many colors and everything,
mhm.
and he's kind of a white boy with red hair.
Mm.
Have you seen that statue?
No, 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 I haven't.
Yeah, they just found it probably about 5 or 6 years ago.
Mhm.
It's a statue of Joseph. He's got the coat of many colors and all that. They had put up this statue of him at one point in Gomer, where he lived, where they all lived. And yeah, yeah,
Mm.
that's the only. But it doesn't say if he was
Have
white or anything. It just describes him as reddish.
Have you heard the modern trends of these TikTok pastors, woke leftist TikTok pastors talking about how Jesus repented of racism because he was a racist in a sense?
Isn't that weird? That's like totally not a thing.
Yeah,
It's like it's weird how they said that.
yeah.
You know, what the passage is? Where is that passage?
Well, because they were
Uh,
talking about the lady that he called a dog, you know?
yeah, see, there's the Jews, and the Samaritans. The Jews didn't like the Samaritans. They stayed apart
Mm-hmm.
because Samaritans. A lot of people don't know. Well, what made them a Samaritan? Well, when the um, Assyrian army came in and conquered or halfway conquered Israel. They raped a bunch of Hebrew women, and they gave birth to half Assyrian, half Hebrew people who became segregated because they were like Assyrian bastards, basically.
Mm-hmm.
And they became the Samaritans. And so they were like half Assyrian. And them and the Jews didn't get along. And yeah, and Jesus, he, all he said was, um, it's not right for me to take the children's food and give it to the dogs. He didn't call her a dog. He was just saying like a parable
Mm-hmm.
type, like what do you call that? Um, a
Like an
like
analogy, you know?
like a piano, like analogy, like a
Mm-hmm.
parable. Anyway, so yeah, but it was common. I mean, I don't know if they called them dogs or not back then, but yeah, they weren't a race. The Samaritans weren't a race because the Assyrians were not a race. I mean, they were like Sumerian. They were the descendants of Nimrod. But as far as being a race, they weren't a race. They were a people group, and it was a national thing.
Mm-hmm.
So it would be like Norwegians and Swedish people.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
If they didn't like each other, it wasn't because they're all white, they're
Right.
all Scandinavian. But like if Swedish people didn't like Norwegian people, it would be like that, calling them dogs.
Yeah.
It was
I mean,
racial, right?
we do that even in the Mexican community. We often do that depending on what state you're from. We call you different names, but we're all Mexican, you know?
Yeah, right. If you're like from Jalisco or you're from like, Juarez,
Or here, even here in America, like Californians are like, oh, he's a surfer Californian, or he's a honky from Texas or whatever. You know.
Yeah, well, then in your area, it's west of the 5, east of the 5, right?
Yeah.
That's so west of the 5. I mean, come on, give me a break. That's so 5. Right?
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. I get you. Yeah. No.
So it's like that. It wasn't even a racial thing. So
Yeah.
he says if he repented of anything, it wasn't racism. He wasn't repenting anyway. It wasn't, but it wouldn't have been racism. It
Mhm.
would have been nationalism.
Yeah. Very subtly, is he trying to basically uh steal the divinity of Christ with that little story? You know what I mean? you know. Uh,
Um, yeah, I mean, she said it was the whole thing, the whole passage where she came up and touched him and or no, she it was her daughter. Was that the one? Yeah, her daughter was possessed,
I don't
right?
know. I don't. I can't.
And yeah, I might be mixing up my stories, but I think
Yeah.
her daughter was possessed and she asked Jesus to heal her daughter, to cast the demon out of her daughter.
Mm.
But she was back home anyway. Um, So his disciples were like, "Hey, this dog is messing with her." She was Samaritan. He's like,
Mhm.
and he didn't say that. He just said, "This woman's bugging you."
Mhm.
They didn't call her a dog. And then he said, and she's like, "I need my daughter is suffering at home with a demon." And he said, and Jesus said, "It's not right for me to take food from the children and feed it to the dogs."
Mhm.
And she said, "But sir, even the dogs eat the crumbs that fall from their master's table."
Mhm.
And then Jesus said, "Great is your faith, woman." And her daughter was healed from that very hour, remotely,
Mhm.
might add. He never got anywhere near her daughter. She was like back home.
Right.
Uh, so, yeah, I mean, it wasn't any kind. It would be if you could only call that like a nationalistic statement, but I mean, Jesus just gave an example, like an analogy. So, yeah, Jesus never repented of anything.
Yeah, that's exactly what I'm talking about. Like it, it defeats like the divinity of Christ if he has to repent from something. That's the whole point of him being a perfect sacrifice. You know what I mean?
Yeah, huh? He was, yeah, exactly. He was without sin. God the Father did repent in the Old Testament in Genesis.
Mm.
Uh, yes, he repented that he had made man on the earth. It says,
Yeah, I know. I remember reading that. I was like, damn, we that bad?
yeah, yeah, yep. He repented that he made, and he also repented of um of killing all of Israel. He
Mhm.
was going to just kill all of Israel,
Yeah.
and Moses talked him out of it. He
Hmm.
said, "Hey, if if you kill all of them, the Egyptians and all these other nations are going to say that you just led your people out into the desert,
Hmm.
so you kill them."
Hmm. Yeah, yeah.
And God repented of its idea to kill all Israel and changed his mind.
No,
Moses,
indeed. I think I definitely see that, you know, that story, and definitely like you kind of see the character of God, and also you also see within the story the transformation that God does within people like Moses. You know what I mean? Because in the beginning he didn't even want to be a part of the plan, and by the end of the story he was willing to die for those people. You know what I mean?
yeah,
And thus he becomes almost like this messianic figure, because he was like, I'll take on all of, the wrath that you're supposed to give to your people and just let them live. And I believe like that's like an important part to take away from that narrative.
yeah, and it's that whole narrative is kind of a gives you a window into God the Father, the creator of the known universe, is not like really the way we think of him. I mean, he's obviously Moses was able to change his mind. God regretted that he'd made man on the earth. He's not this what we think of as perfect. I mean, I had a talk with Dr. Future once, and there's these two schools of thought in theology, and one is that God is like a perfect flat surface without one molecule out of place.
Mhm.
And then the other school of thought, which says that God is like a bumpy surface, like a bumpy surface without a single molecule missing.
Mm, mm,
So I'm kind of that school.
mhm,
God is not he's able, like, you see his character. Moses was able to talk him out of something,
mhm,
you know. Uh he also, God the Father also repented once. We see him repenting once that he even made us in the first place.
mhm.
We also see God open to suggestions in
Kings, no?
in Kings, right?
Mhm.
Yeah, you got that one. You nailed that one.
Yeah, in Kings where not only that, but here's the best part where he's asking, what seems to be a council, like, what are we going to do with how do we destroy Ahab, right? And the funny part is because I asked a lot of my family this because they're, they have that perspective of nothing's out of line, everything's perfect when it comes to God. But I asked them, do you think is it possible for God to lie or to use deception? And they're like, no, it's not. He would never do that, And then I'm like, well, you haven't read this story, then, you know what I mean? Because the council had decided, or those angels or those spirits, according to the Book of Kings, that they're gonna be a lying or what was it? What was the words? Uh,
Well, he said he was in his council, and he had his mighty armies to the left and his mighty armies to the right. And he basically said, "What are we going to do with this Ahab critter?" And he's like, he's taking suggestions. And one of them spoke out and said, "Hey, I got an idea. Why don't we send a lying spirit into Ahab's prophets, and they will prophesy falsely, and Ahab will believe it and go into this battle where he gets his butt kicked." And God, okay, that sounds like a good idea. Do that.
yeah, exactly. And then that's the point. Like he used a lying spirit to bring
Yeah.
judgment upon somebody. It's just like what, you know?
Oh, yeah, and he uses really bad people, bad rulers, to do his will too,
Mhm.
for judgment. I mean, uh, basically Assyria, Babylon, King Nebuchadnezzar. That was like he was a really wicked guy, and then God gave him dreams and everything, and Daniel interpreted him. Ultimately, there's references where God says, "My servant Nebuchadnezzar," and he'll also say, "My servant Pharaoh." So God he utilizes really bad people to judge Israel.
Mhm.
So God will pretty much use anything he wants to do his bidding. Whatever happens to work.
So, okay, let me touch on that. And this might, I don't know, I might lose some listeners for this, but here
Uh-oh.
here we go. These are just personal conversations that I have with Omar.
Oh, we're getting personal.
Yeah, these are the off-air conversations where we say, yeah, we probably can't say that on the show. You know
I,
what
I peed the bed until I was almost 12.
I mean?
Yeah.
Yeah, I peed the bed last week, man. I'm just playing. No, I'm kidding. I'm kidding.
Oh, it happened when I was married too. When I was first married. Oh my
Oh
God, it
gosh.
happened once. That was
Ye-
so bad. Anyway,
Yeah.
go ahead.
No, but what I was saying was, this is just our personal belief. We can't necessarily substantially biblically prove this, but just reading the whole Bible multiple times over and over, I feel like the morals, the morality aspect, the objective morality of the Bible was set primarily for us human beings, for us to be able to thrive in this, planet we call Earth. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And I don't feel necessarily that he abides by those rules because he's beyond that. You know what I mean?
Yeah, he is the law.
Right.
So
And I know to some people will say like, well, just because, like would want to compare it to like, oh, so just because you're a cop doesn't mean you don't have to follow the law. Well, I'm like, it's beyond that. You know what I mean? These, I feel like at this point in my walk with God, because I've read the Bible over and over, and there's so many instances where the character of God is just, you want to say like, well, there's nothing else to compare it to, but you want to say it's more human, like, it's more emotional and powerful, where it almost seems like imperfect according to the standards that we have set for him,
Our own idea of what perfect is.
Right.
We don't know. We're not in a position to judge God.
Exactly. And if he is this omnipotent, which I believe he is omnipotent and omniscient being, beginning to end, Alpha and Omega, he knows all outcomes. We have the story of David on the city of Keilah, right? Where he's like, if I go in there, will they kill me? And he's like, yes. All right, so I'm not going in there. So he decides not to go in there, and then there was a different outcome. You know what I mean? Like he knows even the outcome of every decision we can possibly make. So, he can do whatever he wants, man. You know what I mean?
That's my theology. God does what he wants.
Yeah, and it's just I've chosen to believe in him, and out of fear and respect and reverence and awe, and also like just fear, like, oh, that is also like regular fear where I'm like, dang, he's powerful, like for real, and that's the God I've chosen to believe in, because I've seen him work in our lives and in many people's lives, and I'm not going to hold him to what my standard of perfection is. He can do whatever he needs to do, even if it seems crazy to us. It always turns out for the good in the future in some way or another, and I might not even be able to see that within my lifetime. I might go to my grave thinking, I can't believe God would do that. But then in the future, I see that the outcome of that, the butterfly effect of that one thing, was just way beyond my understanding anyway. So how could I judge that,
Yeah, we're not in a position to judge God. I mean, a lot of especially Calvinists and stuff, they'll put God in a box and they'll say, well, he can't break his own rules. Well, he is the rules. So whatever he does, that's the rules.
Mm-hmm. You say, what do you mean I can't?
The conversations with like Hebrew roots guys, and and they say, well, the law says this and the law says that, and but we're under a new covenant, and they're saying, well, you can't have a new covenant because there was an old covenant, and what the answer to that is that God is the covenant. I mean, whatever he says, if it changes, it's he's the law. He is the law. And Jesus was the fulfillment of the law. They'll tell you that he was just there to bring it to its fullness. That's what that means. But that's not what it means. It means that Jesus fulfilled a contract. Like if you are like a carpenter and you have a contract to build a house, right? You build the foundation and you frame it and you put on the sheathing and the insulation and the roof and the rafters, all that, the top of the roof of it, the windows, all that, and it's done. You fulfilled the contract. Now the house is standing. It's there and it's completed. So Jesus fulfilled the contract of us. We were condemned to hell and with no escape because we're inherently evil. We're born evil. We're born dead. And we can't follow the law. We can try, but Jesus fulfilled it for us. He fulfilled that law. So he has become the law. Whatever Jesus said is now the law. So that's the thing that like the Hebrew roots guys can't grasp. It's just that God is the law.
Right.
Whatever Jesus said, that's the law.
Yeah.
So all you got to do is just keep reading to the end of Revelation. Now you know it.
Yeah, I think Heiser even says, like, I'm not sure why the Hebrew roots guys use the book of Hebrews a lot, because the book of Hebrews debunks a lot of their claims. You know what I mean? Like,
oh, absolutely.
And so, but
Colossians and.
Let me ask you a question. I'm just wondering what your thoughts are, because I'm just, I have you for a short time, but I just want to know what's in Johnny's head about certain things. I heard your show. You did a space weather show where you used one of our shows as an example to kind of debunk the flat Earth, because we've had two guys on the show, and I'm sure if you heard the beginning or the end of the show, I mean, we're open to the discussion. We're not promoting the idea like, yeah, you better believe this or nothing else. You know what I mean? And nothing like that. We don't have that approach for anything actually. Um, but that being said, when you look at the Bible and you read it, like as far as like creation is concerned and the science of the Bible, like do you hold the Bible to be like a literalist, hyper literalist? Like where do you categorize yourself, if you categorize yourself at all? Like do you believe in like the creation as far as like 24 hours, 6 days, 7 days, like you know what I mean? Or how do you approach those sensitive subjects to some people out there?
Well, I have a fairly advanced view, of it because I've been learning about that stuff for 36 years. So,
Drop it.
um,
Let's see it. What are you talking about?
okay, well, okay. A day is 1,000 years, and 1,000 years is a day to the Lord. Right?
Okay.
That sets up a 1,000,000 to 1 ratio in space time.
Okay.
So God spoke the universe into existence on day one, and uh, at at the point of origin of the universe to here, it's been 14 billion years. But where God is in His point in space time, it's been 7 days. So that's how the whole Big Bang theory backs all of Genesis up really well. So from
So
where God is, He created the universe in 6 days, and even now, where God is, it's the seventh day.
so what you're
Right.
saying is his experience of time is
Right.
not what
He's
we're
at the
is
center
not
of
what we're
creation.
experiencing here.
No, because space time, the way it expands, it expands on a logarithmic curve, 1,000,000 to 1. So from our position in the universe, yeah, it's been 14 billion years, but where God is, He's in the seventh day. So
Okay.
literal 24-hour days
Mm.
where God is, where we are, no, because we're way, way out here.
Yeah, because I've always asked myself how can you measure time, for example, because we measure time as far as sun and the moon, and I just always kind of question like, well, how are we measuring time when the sun and the moon didn't come until a few days into creation? You know what I mean? Like,
Right. Right now, we're measuring time by watching the vibration of cesium atoms.
what is that?
Cesium Cesium atoms, they vibrate at a certain frequency, and that's where the atomic clock in Boulder, Colorado runs on a cesium clock. It's
Mm.
time to the oscillation of cesium atoms, so that it counts the continuum by that.
I believe there's a Christian scientist out there. I don't know if this is related, but it talks about how when God spoke things into existence, all the atoms, the reason that they're sticking together is because they're at a certain sound wave or wavelength, and so he was kind of equating the sound waves or the wavelengths that holds us together to the voice of God. Is that what you're talking about?
Oh, I vaguely remember something like that. The voice of God holding us together. It says in Saint John, all things were, it's talking about Jesus. He says, in the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with God, and the Word was God, and the Word became flesh and lived among us. It says, and then it goes on to say that everything that was made through Him, and everything that was made is held together by Him.
Mhm.
So, yeah, I mean, I don't know the science of that, but yeah, I mean, the Bible does say that.
Yeah, because I bring it up because along in the quote unquote truther community, what I unfortunately see a lot of growth of is kind of like the new age, and the new age mixed in with like Christianity as well and things like that. And a lot of the things that they bring up are scientific in nature, but they kind of spiritualize the science and say, look, we're greater than we think. And they talk about, the vibrations and different things like that. And they show how certain vibrations literally, like they'll show like sand and they'll shoot a certain sound vibration to it, and it molds it into a different designs, like beautiful designs too, and very intricate designs. And so as they're explaining the science of vibration and sound, I'm just kind of like remembering these verses, in the Bible where I'm like, That almost sounds like it's the voice of God holding us together. You know what I mean? That's pretty. I mean, I don't know. It doesn't seem too far of a stretch. You know what I mean?
Well, and Saint John says that all things are held together by Jesus. Jesus is holding the universe together. So
Right.
I'm not, I've never got into that stuff. I've gotten into the Big Bang as it relates to creation and the million to one space
So
time
you don't have a problem
creation.
with millions of years having to
No,
pass here on Earth, then?
no, billions, 14. Well, the Earth itself is they think is about 3.5 billion years old, but where we are at our point in the universe in the space-time continuum, it's 14 billion years, but where God is, it's the seventh day, literally 24-hour days where God is at the center of creation. This million to one logarithmic curve ratio of space-time is what makes us out here at 14 point, I think it's 14.3 billion years. So yeah, no, I'm not a young Earth creationist.
So you never went to the Kevin Ham Museum?
Yeah, I don't subscribe to any of that. The evidence is like not very good. But if it turned out to be uh different than I thought, then that would be fine. But one problem I really have is that people will lump in the Big Bang with evolution, and they have absolutely nothing to do with each other. And another thing,
Well, the
flat
only
Earth.
thing I think they have to do with each other is that they need that much time in order for evolution to work. But even so,
Yeah, but we've never seen any species
turn into
change
another
to
species.
another. There's no evidence of it.
Right, right.
Even the evolutionists are looking for a new path because they realize that, hey, this is not, it's not. Now, when you have a species that is exposed to a certain environment, it will change. It will adapt to its environment.
Hmm.
So there is evolution within species. Even humans will adapt to their environment.
What was that guy that used to walk around with a microphone and ask scientists, "Give me one example"? He had like an accent. I think he was Australian or British or
Yeah,
something.
yeah, and
Who?
they couldn't do it.
Yeah, he's like, "Give me one example of one species turned into another species," and they were like, "Oh, well, there's this organism turned into that organism." Like, nope, that's still an organism. Like one species to another species. Give me one example, and everybody was like, "No, well, that's just what we believe." So they're like, "Oh, so you take it on faith? You've never seen it, you know?"
People never followed the cutting edge science, and the cutting edge evolution is like, it's like looks almost like creationism. They're just they're woke.
Yeah, I think more now than ever. They're leaning towards this intelligent design thing.
They are. It looks a lot more like that. They're searching for a new path, and they haven't found it. And the problem is that it's because God created everything, and they're gonna have to come to grips with that the whole thing's been designed.
Hmm.
But so yeah, that's one thing that I really think the Big Bang lines up with Genesis really well. I've heard a lot of presentations by actual physicists that are Christians and Jewish, and especially in the Hebrew, it really lines up well. So yeah, I believe, and that's a very reasonable.
So
I
you
mean,
do
I don't
do you
know, but
think then the Bible stories like from Genesis, starting from Adam and Eve to Jesus Christ, or Adam and Eve to us, you think that takes place within that time frame, or you think those specific stories is kind of hard to say when the time started for the Bible narrative?
yeah, G.H. Pember, the famous 19th century and 1800s theologian, he had a thing that he wrote a book called Earth's Earliest Ages, and he believed that there was a gap in Genesis, so that might be possible.
Hmm.
That there was, the Earth was here with the civilization, and this was the time of the angels and all of that, and then it was destroyed, and he says in the Hebrew, the Earth became void,
Right.
the Earth was void, a complete destruction, and then a makeover. And that might be true. That might, that sounds like it might be true. But the Earth could have been here 3.5, 3.4 some billion years before Adam and Eve, and that would be fine. I don't see the problem there. Maybe there was no gap. Maybe the Earth was just here for a very long time, a very old planet, and God finally decided to create man from the dust,
Yeah.
which I believe He did.
Do you subscribe to any of that Rahab, Mars, civilization on Mars, or anything like that?
Well, the flat earthers, they're really famous for saying NASA lies. Well, I think NASA does lie, but it's not about going to the moon or going to Mars or any of that. It's what they found.
Mm-hmm.
They're not telling us what they found on the moon and on Mars. I think they've found stuff. I've seen some. There's been some really, really good like photo evidence of things like um that the robot head on the moon. Wow, that blows me away. That's
Mm.
dude, a robot head. You ever seen that?
No, I haven't. No.
Wow. Yeah, that's a robot head. And there's also other photographs on the moon from that NASA has slipped through. We didn't catch that one, and it shows like this power plant. And wow, you should look into that. It's really cool.
I think Omar has, but we discussed it, but we just never fully went into it. And I know Timothy Alberino and people like that. They talk about things like that, where maybe there was this whole ancient civilization, and maybe it was during that time, during that gap period. I don't know. During the time of the angels or the titans, or like different. There's different stories that kind of line up with that idea that there could have been, like one of my favorite movies that actually led me to that was well, I should say not my favorite movie, but I stumbled upon this movie. I don't know why I said favorite, but I saw that movie John Carter, which it was the whole John Carter from Mars thing.
That was cool.
Yeah, and it was cool, and I didn't know it was a book thing, and it was like it was before Star Wars and all that. I didn't know that. And
Well, yeah, early 1900s. The guy that wrote Tarzan, Edgar Rice Burroughs. Yeah.
yeah, and I didn't know that, and so when I saw the movie, it just kind of sparked a curiosity because I was barely learning about ancient civilizations and the Nephilim tribes, and then I heard about the possibility of actual fallen gods or just gods in general living on these other planets, which is why they're named after different gods, and different civilizations they could have started, and it just kind of sort of lined up with certain biblical narratives, and I was just kind of interested in that stuff, and I'm like, oh, I don't know, and I wanted to get Timothy on and talk about it, but we haven't had a chance yet, but I just find that fascinating, but again, I'm willing to have these conversations. People will message me from both sides, that believe on our planetary system, as it's stated, and people that are flat earthers and things like that, and different kinds of flat earthers and hollow earthers and all kinds of earthers, and I'm just kind of like, yeah, I don't know, man.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, there's just so much. There's just so much, a mountain of evidence that things are as they say. I mean, there's just so many Christians involved in the space program, and they're also Christian astronomers and then astrophysicists, and there's just way too many of us living in the real world, in the real universe, just to completely debunk any kind of flat Earth stuff. And another thing that flat earthers do, their big sin is that they are accusing other Christians of being liars, and they have no proof of it. And that's huge. They're going to answer for that. You can't do that. You can't, sit there and accuse thousands and thousands of Christians that are probably a lot better people than you of
hmm
being liars. And you'll answer for that. That's a sin.
hmm
You have no proof of it, so you're calling them liars outside of the presence of witnesses. It's slander. That's a sin.
Yeah.
So I think questioning things is fine, but taking a position on basically nothing but um, rhetoric and hype, and then calling a whole a whole massive millions of people liars. Oh man, millions of Christians liars. Wow, I wouldn't want to be you. I wouldn't want to be there.
Right.
That's a really bad thing. Flat earthers are like, okay, so what if are you married? You're married, right?
Me, no. Omar is.
Oh, do you have a girlfriend?
Yes.
Okay, so what if you were like, hey baby, I'm lonely.
Yeah.
Why don't you come over and see me, right?
Right.
And your wife said, and your girlfriend said, dude, you are least alone when you're by yourself. How would you feel about that? Wouldn't you say something like, wait a minute, that's just a weird saying. That
Right.
doesn't mean anything.
Right.
But it's clever,
Right.
right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Right. You would say, well, you would argue with her over that.
Very likely argue. Yes. Yeah.
You would say, wait a minute, I'm not least alone when I'm by myself because I'm alone here. You know, I'm lonely here. Come on over.
Mm-hmm.
No, you're least alone when you're by yourself. You're like, no, that's just a stupid saying. It doesn't work in real life. Flat earthers do a lot of that. Like you can't have a highly compressed gas, you know, against a vacuum without a barrier, right?
Mm-hmm.
They say stuff like that, which means nothing. You know, that's not how things work.
Mm-hmm. I always
They say-
quote when I don't agree with something that Christians are saying or flat earthers or anybody, I just I just quote that. It's not even a really good line that anybody could remember, but it's from like an animated Lego movie, you know? And I just kind of try and do that guy's voice from that Ninjago Lego movie. And don't judge me. I watched that with my daughter, okay?
Those are funny.
Yeah. And so I watched it, and the guy was explaining how evil his dad was, and he was just like, well, everybody has their quarks, you know what I mean? you know, and he just kind of played off all his evil stuff just by saying that one line, you know. But
yeah, it's kind of like that. And another thing flat earthers say is that water always finds its flatness. Well, that's not true. Water finds its level. When they say, well, level and flat, they try to make them the same, but they're totally different. Flat is a flat plane in four-dimensional space. A flat plane in it's 2 dimensions in 4-dimensional space. That's flat. That's what flat is. Level follows gravity. So level is spherical. So they'll say, you know, that water finds its flatness. It doesn't. Water finds its level. And level is spherical shaped because level follows gravity. Gravity is spherical. The reason gravity is spherical is because it pulls everything equally in all directions towards the center of mass. So that's why you get a sphere, because it's pulling everything from all directions equally. So you end up with this sphere around it. It's a pulling force.
mm-hmm.
And so level is curved. So, you know, and then what do your guests said? An airplane follows the flat plane over a flat level surface. But wow, you just said a whole bunch of stuff that's like you're least alone when you're by yourself. It's like an airplane follows level, which is curved in reality, over a curved level surface. If it flew over a flat surface, if that they don't exist on Earth, but if they could find one somewhere, it might want to fly over a flat surface. If if the pilot wanted to maintain a certain altitude over sea level. But yeah, I mean they do that a lot. They do that over and over again, and they brainwash themselves. You're least alone when you're by yourself. You're least alone when you're by yourself, till they believe it, and then that's what forms the basis of their worldview.
Yeah, I think the unfortunate. Yeah, I get you. I think the unfortunate thing that we do as human beings, it's that, if you're right about one thing, you must be right about everything, and that's just isn't the case with anybody here on Earth, And like you said earlier, you gotta bite the meat and spit the bones out. You know what I mean?
Because if you're wrong about one thing, you must be wrong about everything. That's also a very severe logical fallacy.
Right, and we do that often. Well, we'll discredit a theologian or another Christian or whatever because we don't agree with certain things, but it doesn't mean that they're necessarily, don't throw the baby out with the bathwater, as they say. You know what I mean? Like you have to sort it out. You can't be so. I try my best not to be emotionally responsive in a negative way towards disagreements, because amongst all the disagreements, there's still something I agree with. And
Oh,
like,
absolutely.
for example, I've heard that's our same guest talk about, what's going on with this whole virus and the pandemic, and I 100% agree. I think this
Oh,
has,
yeah.
been definitely a tool to perpetuate this whole new world order, technological global system, the kind of thing, the
Oh,
Great Reset, so to speak.
oh, yeah. I was right with him on that. I mean, there is a conspiracy.
Yeah, and
You
and
know?
just and I've heard his other shows, about different things, and like I said, there's so many things where you just got to sort it out, and just
I like
kind of.
this idea about like money too, like, and like you said in the beginning, where there's this voice telling us, we can't be what we really are, our potential. And he was saying, well, you have this voice saying, oh, I can't make $1 million, so you never make it. He goes, but if you don't have that voice, you can make $1 million,
Mhm,
which I thought that was great. I
mhm,
thought, wow, I totally agreed with him there.
mhm.
I wish I could get that thing going where I make $1 million.
Don't we all, Johnny?
Dude, he's got something that I want right
Yeah,
there. Tell
indeed,
you
indeed.
that.
But I guess that's why he was a successful businessman.
Yeah, solar panels. I guess he
Yeah.
sold solar panels, which collected the energy from a projection.
Hmm.
Whatever. It just goes to prove that you don't really have to live in reality to be successful. I think that's wonderful. Yeah,
Gosh.
yeah. I had fun picking that guy apart, but I and on the other hand, I do believe there are conspiracies, real ones. Like the I was right with him with this whole COVID thing. I mean, it is definitely an operation. It is this major, major dark evil project. I got vaccinated.
Oh,
Believe it
did
or not,
you?
I got shot.
Which
Yeah,
one did you get?
I got the first one, the Pfizer 2 shot.
Okay, so since you got vaccinated, how do you feel about all these people talking about so staunchly against it?
Well, the guys that say it's the mark of the beast, that's just ridiculous because, for one thing, where's the beast?
Mm-hmm. Right.
And for read Revelation 13, you know how many things have to happen before we finally get to the mark of the beast?
Right.
Man, it's like there's not going to be any
Well,
argument.
that's kind of how it's been a thing forever, where Christians say when the credit card, when the barcode, when the QR code, everything's mark of the beast.
Yeah, yeah, but we finally get to the mark of the beast, there's not going to be any arguing. Everybody's going to know that's the mark of the beast.
Yeah, and
It's not.
so how do you feel about the vaccine exactly? Because the argument is that it's messing with you genetically, the RNA vaccine and all that stuff. So how do you feel about that?
Um, it just all it does it doesn't mess with you genetically enough to worry about. So I'm gonna go ahead and be genetically modified. I've already been genetically modified. I took the first shot, so
Hmm.
it manufactures a spike protein like shell that your body identifies as the coronavirus, and it develops antibodies in order to kill it. So I think it's going to kill anything that has a spiked protein crown, like the coronavirus, which is like most of the common colds that I catch every winter, and then that which turn into sinus infections, which just torture me for 3 months. I really think it's going to kill pretty much anything with a corona shell,
Mm.
which so I think it's the cure for the common cold. From the science of it, I think it's wonderful.
Hmm.
Uh, wow, they finally. I thought, dude, an mRNA, a messenger RNA based vaccine to combat any kind of coronavirus. Dude, I thought we'd get to Mars before that happened. It's a
Hmm.
cure. It's literally a cure for the common cold,
Hmm.
which they all said we've gone to the moon, we've gone to Mars, we've gone to Jupiter, we've sent probes all over the solar system. Even got one leaving, going into interstellar space. We still haven't found a cure for the common cold. dude, I think we just found it. And I just got
Can we still be friends even though I don't get the vaccine, bro?
yeah, yeah. I was getting it for me.
How do you feel about this whole? Because I think, well, like me for example, the only issue with me is that it seemed to be that it was going to be kind of forced, and then we got these vaccine passport stuff. Which is I feel is like going into the whole globalist agenda, and that's kind of my bigger issue. Not so much the vaccine. My biggest concern with the vaccine is just that it's new, and there obviously has been adverse reactions, but but
all vaccines are dangerous.
yeah, and I agree with that. And then because I don't think people have realized that most people have already had issues like when they don't get even the vaccines that we have already before this one. Like if you don't have your like every child in America has like a vaccine card, and you got to be current on all those vaccines. You know what I mean? And if you don't, you can't go to public school. You can't. A lot of doctors won't even see you. You have to really look for a doctor to take you when you're not current in the already required vaccines. You know what I mean? And so I guess that's kind of the issue. So how do you feel about the political aspect of that, or at least it's been politicized?
Oh, and they're using it as a tool. The whole vaccine passport, they're gonna push that, dude. It's gonna be like, yeah, I'm gonna be able to do so many things you can't do. But that's not why I did it. I got it because I didn't want to get any coronaviruses. It's not just the SARS-CoV-2 virus. It's any coronavirus, which is all the horrible colds that I catch all winter. I really believe it's gonna protect me from that. So the passport, that's just gonna be a whatever. Okay, give me the passport, whatever. I don't even care about that.
Mm-hmm.
So politically, I mean, between you and me, there isn't anything there, but they're going to push it, dude.
Yeah.
It's going to be, and it's the beginning of control. They're going to use it to control us. There is a conspiracy, dude. There really is.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, it's good to have, that's why I want to have you on, because, you said earlier, you don't consider yourself to be, really into conspiracies, but you have the Fringe Radio Network, which is interesting, There
are conspiracies. I just don't believe everything's a conspiracy.
Right. And
this is one of them, though. This is a conspiracy.
Mm-hmm.
This whole thing, this whole vax passport thing, dude, and COVID and all that. And there's a lot of conspiracies. I don't believe that Biden won the election either. I don't believe that one either.
Yeah.
There's another conspiracy. So yeah.
Oh, come on, man.
Come on, man. I got hairy legs.
Going up my back. They used to touch my legs. Oh, Lord.
You really actually believe that we elected that guy?
Mm-hmm.
You can't even string a sentence together. Are you kidding me?
Mm-hmm.
And there's no way.
Yeah.
They made it happen, dude. They're going to they forced it down our throats, and they're forcing the vaccine down our throats.
Yeah.
We just happened to want one. That was the only thing that there's nothing political about it.
Do you personally believe that, like, Trump in his barrage that turned into like the cube or thing, do you think that was maybe like a psyop as well? Because it turned into something like its own cult in and of itself. You know what I mean? Like it was really, really weird, And
I think the military was behind him, and they could have easily just kicked Biden out of there. But I really believe just before he stepped down, he had religious Paula White. Is Paula White? Is that her name?
Yeah.
Conference with her because he had to make this big decision. And I really believe that he decided that if he took over the presidency and claimed it, there would have been a huge civil war in America. And he just didn't want to see that happen. So he just stepped down. He figured it would be better for the country if he just stepped down, because there would have been, dude, I live in Portland. I wouldn't have been safe.
Oh, man. Yeah, it was rough over there. I saw a lot of videos from Portland.
Oh, yeah. Portland, man, they really put Portland on the map. You go downtown Portland, man, dude, that place is like a wasteland.
Jeez.
I mean, they have destroyed it.
Jeez.
It's like just blocks and blocks of just destroyed.
What are you talking about? It was nothing but peaceful protest, bro.
Oh, I've been talking to Portland Antifa. I've been trying to get a radio interview with them.
No way.
Get them on the Iron Show, and so far they've been talking to me, but they don't want to go on the radio yet. They're not willing to actually step on. But Portland Antifa, they used to be heroes. You know, we all used to think they were awesome because like 7-8 years ago, we had a Nazi problem in Portland, and that's what they did. They beat up Nazis. So the Nazis would have all this big hate rally, and the Antifa would come in and kick their butts. And we thought that was cool, but now Antifa, they kind of define Nazis differently now.
Right. Everything's a Nazi.
Yeah, everything's a Nazi.
Like if they see some of my posts on my personal page, me from Mexico, Zacatecas, they'll be like, "Oh, you're a Nazi." I'm like, "Bro, I don't even have the right skin for that, son." You know?
Yeah. Yeah. Well, they'll say, "Oh, you're a South American Nazi," because the Nazis moved to Argentina. But, yeah, I mean, but Antifa, those guys down there, they won't hurt you. I mean, they destroy property. They don't hurt people. If you went down there wearing a big red
MAGA hat
shirt and a MAGA hat, yeah, they.
driving by with my Ford Raptor.
I load a lot of those on the trucks. China loves those things. I load a lot of those on ships. I'm a longshoreman. Load a lot of Raptors. Man, them things are nice.
Yeah, they're beautiful.
Man, it's like riding a pickup Cadillac.
Dude, no, like Dodge Ram just released their version of that. It's called a T-Rex.
Wow.
It is amazing, dude. Oh my, I'm gonna send you a link. I fell in love with it. I was like, I think I'm gonna bust a Johnny. I'm gonna just eat nothing but noodles so I can buy that truck. You know what I mean?
Yeah, just live in the truck.
Yeah, exactly. Just live in the truck.
You don't need a house. Just live in that truck.
No.
Live in that T-Rex.
I know. Roof over my head. Come on.
Sure, dude, you'd be the classiest homeless guy in the whole world.
I'd be the homeless king. I can just have a whole horde behind me. Horde of homeless people.
What do you think about the homeless? I don't know if you got an issue in LA. Yeah, you do.
Yeah.
Are you kidding me? LA. Oh man.
I mean, not just LA, man. I'm about 35 minutes away from LA, and 35 minutes. What was that?
You down in Riverside or?
No, I'm in Ontario. Like,
oh yeah, been there.
Ontario, Chino area. But if you go just a city over into Pomona, there's a huge issue there because that's LA County. So, and that's only like literally 5 minutes away from me right now, you know? So, and there's homeless tents in different parts. And if you even if there were certain ones in Ontario that were hidden, but the cops kind of quickly squashed that. But I work for Coca-Cola. So the route that I had before, it was in San Bernardino, and it was really bad there, really bad in San Bernardino. I mean, it's always been kind of bad. It's like a low income area, but it got incredibly, like, way worse, you know? And there's tents everywhere, you know, and just the whole crackhead needles, pipes everywhere. When you go to the stores that I go to, people overdosing in front of the store. It's nuts, dude.
I'm sorry. I just had to say that we have you're our national account for your recycled stuff. All those big white barrels that the different acids and the flavorings come in, you know, those big white barrels.
Yeah.
The HDPE natural. We get when you guys load your recycle stuff in those trucks, they come to us.
Oh.
I receive stuff once a week, a whole truck, all different kinds of plastics and cardboard bales. And
yep.
Said to say, yeah,
mm-hmm.
You know what I'm talking about?
Yeah.
I'm the guy that loads that truck.
Nice. There you go. Yeah. No, I've only seen the production area a couple times. I work more in the field, like grocery stores, and doing all the account managing and stuff like that, the sales and aspect of it, you know?
You know what I'm talking about?
Oh yeah, I've seen them. I just never deal with it, you know, just because it's not my area.
Yeah. Anyway, but the homeless issue, I just had to say that because I unload Coca-Cola trucks once a week, and it's a tough one because there's a lot of different kinds of plastic on there. I have to grade it and weigh it, and anyway, That's my 3-hour job. Oh, I'll be good. This is what I'm doing for 3 hours, guys. Anyway, the homeless issue, we've got to do something about that. And one thing, I had a homeless guy dig me out of the snow. Dude, I got stuck in the snow here in February when we had the massive snow blast.
Yeah.
And I got stuck in the snow, and this homeless guy was pushing this shopping cart with a garbage can in it with a big old fire raging in it. He comes up and he's got a snow shovel, right? And he digs me out of the snow, and I'm talking to him, and I'm like, we got to do something about this homeless issue. He goes, why? I go, why can't we put you like in an apartment somewhere and give you 4 walls? He goes, you're not going to put me in a box, man. I'm like, oh. He goes, yeah, I've lived in a box before. I'm not going to live in I'll never live in a box.
Right.
He goes, we want to be outside. We got to be outside, man. And so that's how they want to live. So we have to figure out a way where they can live that way.
Maybe like a zoo, like safari style.
Yeah, and you can drive through with the windows rolled up.
And feed them, maybe. I don't know.
You're good. I like it. Great. But,
people are going to get mad at this show for sure.
Well, if they want to be outside, they don't want to live in an apartment.
No, yeah, it's true. Yeah.
Then let's figure out a way that they can live like that and be healthy. I mean, somebody's got to pick up their garbage. We need to send garbage trucks in there, and people need to either be employed by the city to come in there and clean that up, and and give them whatever they need. As far as maybe they need a new tent or whatever, and programs like that. Because if they want to be outside is the thing. So I didn't realize that was the issue.
No, it's really bad.
They don't live in an apartment or a house.
Yeah, no, most of them don't. I think it's well over. I saw a study saying well over 70 or 80, almost 80% want to be outside.
Yeah, and so we need to put together some government programs. Since we got Biden in office, the Democrats, well, let's democratize this stuff, and people that want to be in houses or apartments, let's find them a place to live, and the people that don't, let's go in there and help them live halfway healthy, so they don't, kill themselves with infections from pee and poop, and let's put in some porta potties there, let's, I think America. I think a nation is measured by how they treat their poor people, and I think God looks at that. A lot of people think that, who don't study theology, believe that Sodom and Gomorrah was judged because they were gay. They weren't because they were gay. I mean, take a look. They were judged because they persecuted the poor. That's what we're judged for. I mean, read the book, people. Read the book. It's not why God destroyed Sodom and Gomorrah because they were gay. It's because they persecuted poor people.
Although I think sodomy did add to it. You know what I mean?
I'm sure it didn't help. St. Peter says, I believe it's St. Peter, that Sodom was destroyed because they persecuted the poor. So that was their big crime. That's what got them destroyed. God, if being gay, and was a crime punishable by destruction, America would be destroyed. I mean, they wipe out God would wipe out whole sections of San Francisco.
I think it was
and Portland.
He's a theologian or an apologist. Well, I forgot exactly what he is, but he's fairly known. I think his name is Tim Keller. Have you heard of him?
No.
But he's pretty well known, I think, and I could be getting his name wrong. But the point that he brought up was interesting because he was at a university, like a Harvard or Princeton, like one of those big ones, And they asked him, I think Sam Harris was the one talking to him,
Oh, the atheist guy, yeah.
Yeah. And so he was asking him, so do you believe, being gay or being a practicing gay is what sends you to hell? And he said no. And what he was talking about is he said, it's funny how people bring homosexuality and judge it very, very harshly in the Christian community, but they completely skip and rarely talk about the most talked about sin in the New Testament, which is actually pride. Um,
Oh
and
yeah.
the that sin is overlooked, and a lot of Christians are guilty of it and have no idea, but yet they're very quick to very harshly judge a homosexual, and he explained, it's obviously because it's a very overt in physical practice that it's easy to judge something like that, like drug abuse or drinking or homosexuality, but
God looks on the heart. Usually, somebody who is accusing you of some sin is usually guilty of the same thing or worse.
right, yeah, projection, we do that a lot,
Yeah, that's what I've learned in my long experience walking with Jesus is that the accusers are usually guilty themselves,
hmm
and they're usually guilty of the same thing they're accusing you of. They don't know it,
you
or
know
they know it, which is
Yeah.
even.
God revealed that to me one time, very like a slap in the face moment, because there's this one guy I really didn't like. I didn't like so many things about him. Like I couldn't stand the guy. Like I was pretty near to just almost hating somebody, and I couldn't figure it out. And then when I really
Yeah.
started describing him in my head of why I don't like him, I'm like, dude, this guy's a lot like myself. You know what I mean? you know?
Oh, yeah.
And I was like, dang. And then God kind of revealed it to me where I was like, yeah, exactly. So don't hate him, because I'll forgive him. So, and I'm forgiving you. So, how about you let that go, buddy? And I was like, man, God, why you gotta be like that? And put me on blast.
Yeah, there is one thing. You're not supposed to hate people, and you're supposed to like forgive people, but biblical forgiveness is a little different than that. I mean, yeah, that's a different problem when you're like angry with somebody who wronged you. That's a problem, but it's not a sin of unforgiveness.
Right.
Unforgiveness biblically is, let's say that you're angry at somebody, right? Okay, somebody did something to you. Now, my question to you is, okay, what are you going to do? How are you going to retaliate?
hmm
And what's your answer? What would you say? So, say somebody really did you wrong, and you're really angry about it, and I say, okay, so what are you going to do about it? Well, then what's your answer?
Me, you're asking me,
Yeah.
what am I
What
gonna
do
do?
you do to get them back? What are you going to do to get revenge? What are you going to do?
Hmm.
Usually the answer is, well, nothing.
Yeah, like I was gonna say, like I don't really think I would do something like that. Huh.
No, I'm angry with him. I'm pissed, but I'm not going to do anything. I'm not going to go hurt him or get him back.
Mhm.
Right.
You know
That,
what? That has happened, and because I'm a black belt in martial arts,
dude.
I kind of hope that they do attack me so I can, you know, retaliate in quote unquote self defense. You know what I mean?
Now that there's a some kind of problem, but that's not the sin of unforgiveness.
Right, right,
But
right,
biblically, the sin is you're not. y- Unforgiveness means you're going after them. You're going to do something. You're going to kick their
right,
ass.
right. Exactly, because the idea is that there's a debt that needs to be paid, and you're gonna do whatever it needs to be done in order to get that debt paid. And if you take that upon your hands, then you're taking pretty much God's judgment and using it according to how you just like want to carry out that judgment. But that's not our responsibility.
And God says that revenge belongs to Him.
Right.
He's gonna get him. Don't worry, I'm gonna get him.
Yeah. Exactly.
Now that you're angry, that might be, that's an issue. I mean, if you're dwelling on it, but that's not biblical unforgiveness. Biblically, you've already forgiven him biblically because you're not going to go do anything to him.
Mm. Yeah.
You're going to just let them go on doing whatever they do, and you're not going to do anything. Okay, you might be angry with them for a long time. That's not unforgiveness, not biblically.
Right.
Biblically, you've forgiven them because you're not going to do anything.
Right. All right.
So
Well, that.
holding anger in your heart, that's bad.
Yeah, that
That's bad.
definitely makes me feel better about a lot of things that where I'm like, I'm still angry at the guy though.
The church takes things way too far with our tradition where you
Mhm.
gotta forgive that person, right? And you're like, well, you know,
You
um,
gotta love thine enemies.
love your enemies. That doesn't mean you can't be angry or whatever. I mean, it's just not as hard. Being a Christian isn't as hard as they make it sound.
Yeah.
You haven't got as many problems as they want to put on you.
Yeah. Okay. I get you.
Anyway.
But all right, Johnny. Well, we've been talking for a couple hours now, so I know because of the business that we're in, we can talk for many more hours, and we have lots to talk about. But is there any final thing maybe that you wanted to get off your chest, or as Basil likes to say, before we land this plane?
Yeah. Listen to the Fringe Radio Network. That's FringeRadioNetwork.com.
Very good. And of course, you have the Iron Show. What can they find your stuff?
FringeRadioNetwork.com/ironshow.html.
Mm-hmm.
And or you go to FringeRadioNetwork.com, and right at the top you'll see Iron Show. There'll be a link right at the top, really big letters. It'll say Iron Show. Click on that. Bam, you're there.
Boom.
Or you want to hear some really ancient stuff going back 12 years, we have our ancient recordings at ironshow.com.
Very good.
Yeah.
Hey, man. Well, I want to thank you publicly for allowing us to be part of your network and, helping us out with that. It was really cool. I think we did a show with Leonard Olivares, and then he kind of tied us up with you, and you were like, let's get him on, I'm like, cool. Thank you very much for that.
And you have gained thousands of new listeners by being on the network.
Yeah.
I just have to tell you that.
Yeah. And it was pretty awesome. Like, that's why I was pretty excited. And I was kind of like, I told Omar when this happened, I was like, that's great. I can quit. We made it. You know what I mean?
Yeah. That's one thing I really like, being the headmaster of the Fringe Radio Network, is that I can take somebody and give them thousands more new listeners. I just love being able to do that for people.
Yeah, no, it's definitely a blessing for sure. And, we got a lot of people reaching out from time to time, and, and they're like, oh, I heard you on the Fringe Radio Network. And I was like, oh, cool, So
that's awesome. That's what we want to do.
Indeed.
We want to spread the love, baby. Spread the love.
Indeed. All right, Johnny, well, stick with me. We're going to let these folks listen to some dope tunes, and we will be right back.